Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Bankruptcy conversation. And on this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have business bankruptcy lawyer and litigator Raphael Zahralddin, Director of Elliott Greenleaf PC, all the way from Wilmington, Delaware. Now, Raphael, who is considered to be a leader in the area of bankruptcy, will be talking to you today about a very interesting topic. You see, Raphael has taken the time out of his busy day to come and speak to us about what to do when a major customer or business partner enters into Chapter 11. So, if you are one of the many people in the Wilmington, Delaware area, you might just want to take a break, log out of Facebook. Maybe you're on Twitter or Instagram or any other thing which may cause a distraction. You might even want to pick up a notepad and pen and take some notes as we listen into what Raphael has to share with us today. So let's not keep him waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Raphael.
Hi, thank you, Stewart.
You are so welcome. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to come and speak with listeners today. So with that said then, let's just jump feet first in. In your own words, Raphael, can you briefly describe what types of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help?
Well, that's a very good question because Delaware, while being a small state, actually is a place where people come from all over the world and all over the country to incorporate, either to get an incorporation or to form an alternative entity like a limited liability company. And as a result, we've got a long history here, and we have a long tradition of having very efficient legal services, very highly rated judges. Our judges are all appointed instead of being elected. And that has led to at least three areas where folks come from all over the world because they have a jurisdictional entry into Delaware because a lot of companies are incorporated here. And one of the areas where a lot of companies come to access our courts, even though it's our federal courts, is in the area of bankruptcy. So, for example, if you guys you are probably familiar with the sale of the Dodgers when the baseball team, the Dodgers, was sold. It was a divorce dispute out in Los Angeles. Well, that didn't happen in Los Angeles. The company was incorporated here in Delaware, so they filed bankruptcy here, and that's what happened here. So I represent a whole lot of different types of folks in these bankruptcy cases. When you have a bankruptcy, the debtor is going to be the company that's gone bankrupt. You're going to have a bank or another type of lender. It's usually a bank, but sometimes you have factoring companies or private equity funds or hedge funds that are also involved. And then you're going to have all the people that are unsecured, that didn't have the benefit of collateral. And they can be trade creditors, companies that make or sell things to the, for the debtor, or to the debtor. They can be employees or other service providers, or they can be people who sued the debtor and won, like consumers in a class action. Well, all of those people all come into the court, and what they do is they need to navigate and try to figure out how are they going to get paid, because it's a whole bunch of different type of people and a whole bunch of different type of companies, and they all have different relationships with the company that's gone into bankruptcy, but they have one common theme. They're owed a lot of money, sometimes a lot of money, and they come to me asking for help. And oftentimes, it's not just the money that's owed, but it's a strategic partnership. It may be that the debtor doesn't owe you any money, but they may be producing some component or some piece of what you sell to people, and you need to make sure that that gets delivered to you and that company is going to be healthy. And so it becomes strategic. So even if you're owed money, it may not be, you may be owed a couple $100,000 or even be owed $20,000, but your real issue is, what do you do now that the company that's half your market share may not be around next quarter unless you're watching things and managing it. So those are the types of folks that I end up representing in these cases that file here in Delaware, which again can be multinational cases, for example, and not just local companies from that are physically located here in Delaware.
Fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that so clearly for the listeners, Raphael. This is already shaping up to be a really great interview. Now, before we move forward, it must be said then, Raphael, that anything you share from this point on is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of sharing information. Now, with that said, of all the many misconceptions that come across your table on a regular basis, what's the most common one that you have to deal with then, Raphael?
Well, people think I'm a funeral director. They think that I'm a bankruptcy lawyer. The first thing they hear is that the company's dead, right? And that's not really what I do. What I do, what I try to explain to people is that I'm a first responder. There's been a terrible, terrible accident, and this company has, run into 5 other cars, to use the same analogy, and I'm one of the first people on the scene, and now we're all rushing to the hospital to try to get this company, this patient, to recover. So I'm not there either as the mortician or the undertaker, etc. I am there to help get this, along with the debtors' counsel and everybody else in the room, to keep this company alive. So I'm worried about primarily the other people in the accident that were impacted, other than just the one patient that's going into the ICU, because they may end up being in distress because of their relationship with this company. And look, in other countries, outside the U.S., the existing bankruptcy laws really favor liquidation, which would be more like the funeral home or the mortuary or the But here with Chapter 11, and many countries are trying to incorporate elements of Chapter 11, what we're trying to do is keep the value of the company going. So a lot of the bankruptcies today are either going to be the sale of the company to keep it intact as a going concern, because that's going to give you more money than a liquidation or a fire sale, because an operating company is worth more than its parts sold off to the lowest bidder, basically. And it's going to be or could be bringing in new money, new investment through a plan of reorganization in what's called exit financing, which means somebody's going to come in and take out the old equity and put new money in so the company stays the way it is. But either way you go, it means that you've got a chance for redemption and keeping intact all the economic value that was built up for years in that company, all that money and time that was invested, all the relationships, and that's what's going to be important to the creditors that are out there more than likely. Obviously, they want to get paid their money, but they would love to have this company continue, because our economy and the way companies operate today, that's probably more important, I think, in a lot of instances than what's happening just in the short term. So that's, I think, the biggest misconception people have, and I constantly tell people, no, I'm more like an ER doctor than I am a mortician.
Based on what you just shared with us, and obviously keeping your clients' confidentiality in mind, please share an example of how you would actually help someone, an individual or an organization, who comes to you with those challenges, with that misconception that you just mentioned, and what kind of transformational results you would be able to gain for them.
Well, a typical company that's owed money by a bankrupt company, they don't understand the speed, efficiency, and finality that comes with this process. A lot of times people think, something's happened, I've got time, or they're used to typical lawsuits where you'll get sued, you'll get served, and then it'll be years before you end up going into the courtroom. And that's not the way bankruptcy works. Bankruptcy works in a way because you've got a company that's in distress, their employees need to be paid, If you don't pay them, they may sue you. They may walk away. They may go away. That may be the lifeblood of the company. There are going to be suppliers that may go somewhere else. There are going to be customers that go somewhere else. So there is an urgency to keep the company propped up, to trim the fat, to get it stronger so that you can then figure out a way to get out of the bankruptcy. And as a result, if you are asleep at the wheel as a creditor and you show up 3 or 4 months later, I have seen some companies go through bankruptcy within 30 days and be sold and be operating and be done. And if you show up on the 31st day, the judge is not going to undo everything that's happened to suit you. And so one of the main things that you have to really understand is things are moving quickly. People that are assertive and are involved in the bankruptcy, and you have to make an assessment if that's worth your time and energy. By is this an important customer of mine? Is this worth it to chase after this, or can I source this or go to someone else? But the big thing is you have to be aware of that. And we had a client, for example, who came to us. I won't mention who they are because I'll keep it confidential. But they came to us and they said, this company is bankrupt, but they need us. Our product is such the leader in the market, and they've been using us. There's really no real substitute. We've got it, and we've kept everything off the market. It's all trade secret, and so we're going to go ahead and just kind of ride this out. We don't. So thank you for alerting us to us, but everything's fine. And so fine. So I said okay. Unfortunately, though, unfortunately for them, I called them back very quickly after and said, well, I know you think that you're going to get your contract's going to get picked up. The problem is they're selling this company, your customer, to one of your major competitors. So I don't know if you want them to pick up your contract, so now your major competitor will get all the trade secrets and all the other information that you've been sharing with this customer of yours over time and over the years. So you need to move to Plan B, and it was something where we were quickly able to alert that they weren't able to necessarily change the fact that it became the winning bidder, but they then were able to make a very strategic decision to say, you know what, the couple $100,000 that we're owed here is not worth losing the multi-millions of dollars in market share that we would lose if our information went to a competitor. And so that is a key example of how you really need to be alert and nimble. Even when you think everything's okay, you really need to be on top of the information flow coming through a bankruptcy. Because if you don't, you could end up with a terribly disastrous decision in terms of how you manage your relationship with that debtor.
Well, as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking to my guest today, Rafael Zahralddin, and today's topic is what to do when a major customer or business partner enters into Chapter 11. Now, with that in mind, and for those people who are out there listening right now, Raphael, and they're wanting to know more, what's the most common but unknown pitfall that you'd like them to be aware of, regardless of what situation they find themselves in?
That's an excellent question. It comes up often. Let's say you're a trade creditor, and they really need you. They need your product, and a lot of times they're going to need the same trade terms that they've had, because if it's a bankrupt entity, they're going to have cash flow issues, and they want to be able to get 30 days to pay their bills. But obviously, if you've gone into a bankruptcy, most people are going to say, sorry, we're going to go COD now, and we're going to do that because you're bankrupt. So why would I give you 30 days? So what ends up happening is there will be this extremely, the debtors will be very, very friendly with you. They will put you into this program called a critical trade vendor program. And in that critical trade vendor program, it will say that you are now kind of under a court contract with that vendor, and they'll pay all of your pre-petition amounts, which again, the difference between a pre-petition amount is the amount prior to the filing of the bankruptcy, and then You are not obligated to pay any of those amounts that were owed prior to the day you filed bankruptcy. After bankruptcy, you have to keep up with all your debts. But the stuff beforehand gets put into a pot, and then if you get money out of the bankruptcy, it's split up amongst all of the creditors. So let's say you're going to get maybe in most bankruptcies 5 or 6 cents on the dollar for an unsecured claim. You may get more depending upon if the sale is successful and more money's brought in. But let's just use that as a rule of thumb. So they're saying instead of getting 5 or 6 cents, we're going to pay you 100 cents or maybe 75 cents. But you have to keep on supplying us with goods and services. And that all seems fine and dandy, and you're happy. You're like, that's a complete win. You sign the agreement. You're like, wow, we're coming out ahead on all this. And then not but about 2 years later, after you think everything's fine, you get a complaint in the mail served on you that says that they want to take back all that money as well as any payments that were made 90 days prior to the bankruptcy. And it looks like it's the debtor, and you call them up and you say, hey, why are you guys suing me? Now they say, no, it's not us. It's another party in the case that we assigned all our rights to as part of the negotiations of the bankruptcy. And we're sorry, but this is, under the bankruptcy code, they're allowed to pull this money back. That's one of the main misconceptions. At one point in time in the bankruptcy, the debtor may be your best friend. At another point in time, they may have sold off the rights to sue you. They may have done a variety of different things. And if all you needed to do when you signed that agreement to get your money paid is to put into the agreement that you would not be sued and you had a full release from any future bankruptcy litigation. And sometimes they come back and say, hey, that's out of our hands. We can't do that. You have to make a choice of taking the money now, bird in hand, and maybe getting sued later. You may have defenses. But the point is, it's hard to go back to the people that most of my clients answer to, whether it's a CFO or a head of a division, and say, hey, you know that account I thought was fine and that we took care of like 2 years ago? Well, now I got to pay all the money back. I mean, that is a terrible, very embarrassing situation for clients. And so that's one of the main tips, I think, that come up often in a bankruptcy is to be aware of the bankruptcy litigation that may come 2 years later, that the debtor, of course, isn't going to tell you about when they're trying to curry your favor to get you to do business with them when they're at their most vulnerable.
Right, so Raphael, I'd just like you to imagine, if you will, it's any day of the week, a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it doesn't really matter what day of the week. However, your alarm clock goes off. It's 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever the time may be in your part of the world when you wake up. However, you have a full day's work ahead of you helping your clients. After all of these years practicing in the area of bankruptcy, how does Raphael Zahralddin feel on a day like that?
I think it's a wonderful practice because as a result, there are hundreds of different industries that I've worked in. Like I said, just like death and taxes, eventually for a company, insolvency or distress is going to come around because we see the effects of the macroeconomics. So after 9/11, for example, anything in tourism, hotels, car rental companies, they all came in one after the other. With the rise of shale and natural gas, we've seen anything that deals with, first it was the downstream suppliers, the gas stations and the folks like that who are on very thin margins. They all went bankrupt. And now it's all the people who service the upstream, all of the pipeline builders, the ships that support that, et cetera. We saw the same thing in shipping as well. So all these things happen collectively, and we get a bunch of the cases actually filed here in Delaware. So it's an extremely energetic, it's different every day. It's a new company, and you really have to dig into the industry and the company. We'll never know as much as our clients about these industries, but we have to know enough about it so we can share our knowledge and connect the two, and that makes it a new adventure pretty much every day. Now, I'll tell you, when all these things happen, it's hopping. I mean, it's it is not a rare occasion when we've got one of these big epidemics of bankruptcies coming in an industry. That people will be up all night. There'll be auctions going on that go until late into the evening. There'll be hearings that go on late into the evening, because people's jobs, their customers, their livelihood. There's a big impact on all this, and our judges are very professional in that way. I've seen judges tell their families they're not going on vacation with them because they had an emergency, they had to stay, and they stayed late into the early morning from the night before, working things out. So I think that's the there's going to be a new adventure today, and I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but someone's going to call me up and say, here's what's going on, and can you help?
The more I listen to you, the more it's becoming clear and clear just how important the work is that you're doing out there. So I'm sure the listener who's just tuning in right now, Raphael, would want to know a little bit more about yourself. So please tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, your formal education, and your experience as it relates to the topic of bankruptcy.
I was educated at the University of Virginia. I was originally an English major and switched in my first year, at the end of my first year, over to the School of Architecture. So I actually have a degree in architecture. I unfortunately graduated from architecture school from my undergraduate degree at a time where we were in the midst of the savings and loan crisis, and so there was no building going on. I was working with an architect for about half of the year, and we did a couple wonderful projects, the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. I mean, it was unique stuff. But towards the end or middle of that, I was approached by some folks who asked me if I wanted to come and help actually do some of the support work with the savings and loan prosecutions that were going on through the Justice Department. And I did that working for a law firm in conjunction with the Justice Department. And I ended up getting a scholarship to go to Delaware Law School. I took that scholarship thinking I would go back to architecture, and once I got into school and started to work as a law student, I fell in love with it and decided to stay focused on a legal career. But what I originally did was I took another degree, a master's in law, and a fellowship at Georgetown University, where I was a senior writing fellow, and where I also finished up a master's in law and published a couple of articles, and was approached to become a law professor. So at the young age of 28, I flew out to a bunch of different places. I ended up in California at a school called Chapman University, where I was a tenure-track professor for approximately 5 years. When I got married, and my wife and I were thinking, she had just graduated from Loyola Law School, and I had been teaching at Chapman. I had taken a year leave to work with a judge to enhance our resume at the law school. And we were going to have to make a decision as to whether I would go off to a new law school to be a visiting professor, to pursue other larger academic and scholarly pursuits there, or my wife was going to be a district attorney in Los Angeles. She had the job then, and we're going to have to make a decision between the two. And another firm who was opening up an office in Delaware helped us make our decision. They came to me and said, we'd really like you to go help open up our office in Delaware, and we will find a job for your wife. She's very capable. And that's what we did, and so that's how I ended up here in Wilmington, Delaware. And I ended up doing originally some of the largest debtor cases in the country, but my network and the people that I knew and the calls I would get were all increasingly from creditors. So I decided to move to another firm that wouldn't have the same conflicts, not doing as much debtor work, though we do still do some debtor work for large privately held or family-owned businesses who need help. That's really what led to my being here and practicing and my background. And though I don't practice architecture, the way that we learned in architecture school, the creativity, the ability to think on your feet, the ability to look at something as a larger project, and those things have all served me very well as a lawyer. And I think that we're one of the better managed practices and managed law firms because I have other lawyers here at the firm that have the same type of aptitude for handling the legal work that comes to us. And on top of that, we're also good lawyers, so that's the best of both worlds.
Okay, Raphael, so we're coming towards the end of the show. I've got a couple more questions for you. So if you can just picture the kinds of people who come to you for a consultation and they're wanting to know more about what to do when a major customer or business partner enters into Chapter 11. Now, with that in mind, what final thoughts would you like to leave with them before we finish up with our last question for today?
I think that one of the most important things which resonated throughout our conversation is that information is key, and you have to look at these bankruptcies in a strategic way. So I think the best piece of advice is that you need to get information as early as possible and keep on top of the situation. There are a lot of different ways to do that. We offer a early alert system, as a lot of other folks do, but ours is particularly in depth. And I think that that's one of the best things to do is find a trusted advisor, find some sources where you know that if there is a bankruptcy that occurs, you find out as soon as it files. There are even some services and some folks that follow companies that are in distress. There's different ways you can, if you follow any of the major credit agencies, they sometimes put out alerts. Sometimes you can get alerts through media sources like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. And make sure that you're using all those sources. But at the end of the day, you really need to know once a bankruptcy has been filed. Because when the bankruptcy case is filed, there isn't a whole lot of notice that goes out, and there's a lot of emergency motions that come up because the company has to keep operating, and they can't make certain payments unless they get permission from the court. And they'll get permission to do that on a temporary basis until there's another hearing, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later. But there could be significant money that goes out the door. So you really need to be aware of the bankruptcy as soon as it files, and one of the best ways to do that is have someone who's trusted that you can go to, or a source that you can go to that you know is going to be consistent. And we offer something like that. That's something we do for free for our clients and friends and constituents. But that's something that I recommend everyone do.
Finally then, Raphael, if there is somebody out there who feels they want to know more about what to do when a major customer or business partner enters into Chapter 11, what's the best way for them to find you? Where would they reach you?
I would say one of the best places to go would be through Twitter. They can go to @DelawareCH11, so that's @DelawareCH11 at Delaware Chapter 11, and we do put out a notice there, which has all of my contact information. It also has links. Each one of our notices, when a big bankruptcy files, at the bottom there's a link to my LinkedIn, to my Avvo, to basically every way you can keep in contact with me, including my cell and personal email. And my cell phone is everywhere, so people are welcome to give me a call. But Twitter is one of the best places, and LinkedIn, because this is where we post these alerts, and these alerts are a detailed summary of when a case files and the industry, and it also will have a link to a Google Docs site where we've collected all of the first day motions, the important documents that are coming in, all the financials, everything that comes in the first few hours of a bankruptcy. And that's one of the best, as I said, one of the best strategic sources of information that are out there. And certainly if people go to Twitter, they will find examples of that, and they can always send me an email or connect with me with Twitter, and I can either put them on the email list, or they can follow it there or on LinkedIn. But those are the best places to get me. And my cell phone is 302-545-2888, and it's always on, and I always take phone calls. And I'm much happier talking to somebody who takes advantage of this free information that's out there and helping them way ahead of time than have them come back to me, maybe 3 or 4 months later where things might be much more expensive or much more difficult.
Okay, we are unfortunately out of time. Once more, that was business bankruptcy lawyer and litigator Raphael Zahralddin. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Raphael. You certainly have demonstrated that you are a true educator, advocate, and trustworthy advisor for your client's success. So, a big thank you.
No, thank you. It was my pleasure.
You are so welcome. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to our listener. Thank you for joining us on this very insightful and informative conversation with what I can only describe as one of the top business bankruptcy lawyers and litigators in the Wilmington, Delaware area today. Again, a reminder, his name is Raphael Zahralddin. Make sure you do check him out. Give him a call. Subscribe for that Twitter feed. That sounds like a great resource. I'm sure whatever you do after today's interview, you're going to be in great hands. So that's it, folks. My name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading bankruptcy professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Bankruptcy Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present, and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.